All right, we're on.
What's going on, guys? It's Steve and Alex from Top Guns here in Terre Haute, Indiana. And Steve, we're going to do a little history lesson today, or I guess we're not going to do it because we're just not that smart, but we have somebody here that is.
Right. So we have a good friend of ours, a good friend of the shop that came in today, generously brought an amazing collection in of handgun, or rifles rather, and it's basically the history of U.S. rifles. And so we thought we'd pick his brain.
The history of cartridge rifles.
U.S. cartridge rifles.
Right.
Exactly right. So starting off with the very first one ever used for a U.S. conflict, and going all the way through what we currently have.
So we're going to go through some guns today, guys. We're going to give you a little bit of a history lesson. We have a gentleman here. Tell us a little bit about.
All right, so we're just going to call him Gentleman X because he's asked for his face not to be on or us to use his name for obvious reasons, and so we're going to respect that bit. If you have any questions, he will absolutely answer our questions for us, so don't hesitate to post your questions if you have any as we're going along.
So guys, he has a great collection, and we're really happy to have it here. So if you want, let's get started.
Absolutely.
Let's see what we have right in front of us, and we're just going to go down the line and give you a little history lesson starting from the first one to, I don't want to say the last one, but newer ones. Let's go with that.
Is this the new Glock rifle?
That is the new Glock rifle. So
I thought maybe, okay.
if you could, go ahead and let's start off. Tell us a little bit about what we have.
Okay, this is one of the first cartridge guns the U.S. Army ever fielded. Now, they used a couple other cartridge guns in the Civil War, the Henry and the Spencer. The Henry was never purchased by ordnance. The Spencer was only used by cavalry. What they done is after the Civil War, they took the muskets, and the government, to save money, they converted the first muskets. They put a liner in them, and they made this, it's called a trap door, and the reason they call it a trap door is to load it. You flip this up, you slide the cartridge in here, and you close, quote unquote, the trap door like such. Then you pull the hammer back, cock it, and fire it. It's a single shot.
Is this a non-rifled barrel?
No, it's a rifle barrel.
It is a rifle barrel. Okay.
It's a rifle barrel. The cartridge is 45-70. Everybody's heard of 45-70. The 45 designates 45 caliber, 70 grains of black powder. This particular, the purpose-built ones that were in conversion come out in 1873. The last models in 1874. They were used from 1866 clear up, actually, to the Spanish-American War.
So we would have seen this used starting off during the Indian Wars. Okay.
General Custer would have had these at the Little Bighorn.
All right.
He'd had the carbine version, which is a short
Right,
version.
and why would they have had the carbine version?
For the horseback, because a long rifle was unwieldy on horseback.
Exactly, and I know those are rare. That's something that if you had one, you definitely want to hold on to it.
Right, the same way with the Craigs.
I have to stop here. I'm impressed with your. That was obviously a probing question. You knew the answer before you asked it.
I knew the answer.
I didn't expect you to know that.
What?
I'm just saying. I don't think our viewers would expect you to have that kind of knowledge.
I got it right here. It's all trapped away.
We are all impressed. I think I can speak on behalf of all of our viewers. They are impressed.
Underestimates me every time. Every time.
If you have questions as we're going, don't hesitate to ask him. We'll try to ask.
Someone said, "Isn't this the one the 7th Cav used?"
Yes.
Yes. The answer is yes. It was used.
That would have been Custer. The 7th Cavalry was Custer.
So
All right.
tell us about what do you have here, Craig? Right?
This is a Craig Georgeson. This rifle became obsolete when the French in the late 1880s invented smokeless powder. This is the first bolt-action rifle used by the U.S. Army. The caliber is 30-40 Craig. 30 caliber, 40 grains of smokeless powder. This is, like I say, the first bolt-action. Like I say, it's a Norwegian design. Interesting thing about them is this is your magazine. It's an internal magazine. You flip this open and you drop the cartridges in loosely, and you can load it with the bolt forward or the bolt rearward, and you just snap this shut. This is a magazine cut off. The Army decided to save money. They didn't want the soldiers to waste ammunition. They wanted them to use it as a single shot, not feed them out of the magazine.
Huh.
This all sounds really good on paper, but when they got in the Spanish-American War, the Spanish had 93 Mausers, and they were loaded with 5-round stripper clips. They could reload the rifle a lot quicker than you could load this with single rounds. So it gave the Spanish troops an advantage. So this rifle wasn't
the side gate. So the main reason to have this would be
It was in there so you could load with the bolt forward or closed.
Okay.
Well, most bolt-action rifles, you cannot reload your magazine with the bolt forward. These you can, like I say. But it was slow to reload because you had to handle each cartridge individually.
Right.
All right, so what do we have next on the table? Now you were talking a little bit about this earlier when Steve and I were standing here. So what's so special about this one? What really changed it and what war would it have been in?
What, this one or this one?
This one right here.
Okay, this is the 03 Springfield. The shortcomings they found out with this in the Spanish-American War, the U.S. Army decided, well, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. So they copied the Mauser Rifles. This is your stripper clip guide. They had a 5-round stripper clip. They held 5 cartridges. And you slip the stripper clip in this notch. You'd take your thumb and shove them in there, and you could reload in literally a matter.
You're talking about this notch right here.
Right here is where the stripper clip goes. I should have brought one, but anyway, I did not. These come out in 1903.
The name Model 1903.
That's, yeah, come out in
Man, look
19...
how smart I am.
Right?
That's too
Actually, the proper designation is U.S. Rifle 30 caliber Model 1903. That's
Man,
the,
I am on it. I am on
that's the proper designation. They were used World War I, World War II. They're a beautifully made rifle. The accuracy is quite good.
While we're talking about accuracy, let's recap real quick. What's the effective distance on the 3 guns that we've done so far?
Probably the Craig, 400 or 500 yards.
This is the
Or
Craig?
not the Craig. Yeah,
Okay.
400 or 500 on the Craig. It's about like a 30-30. Probably the same with a 45-70. Depends on how good you were.
Okay.
All right.
They shoot these up 700-800 yards.
Okay.
Pretty good. There was an old saying in World War I that the Germans had the best hunting rifle, the Americans had the best target rifle, and the British had the best battle rifle. That's what they always say. Okay, now we'll
All right,
get
so like you said, this would be in World War I, World War II.
Right.
And then it would have been phased out after that point.
right.
Okay.
They were trying to phase them out in World War II, and they didn't get enough grants built, and they issued several of these. Matter of fact, if you see any footage of the Marine Corps on Guadalcanal with an M1 Grand, that's not the Marine Corps. All the Marine Corps had on Guadalcanal was 03 Springfields.
All right, so what we have next here now we're getting a little bit more modern, I feel like, something that most of us would have seen.
Well, actually, yes and no. This is a model since 1917. They call them an Enfield, and the reason is this is a British-designed rifle. In World War I, pre-World War I, the British was going to replace their #1 rifle. They designed a new rifle. The war started, and they never switched over. However, they contracted with 3 American companies to make, they were called P-14s. They were in 303 British. Winchester made them, Remington made them. There was a locomotive factory, Eddystone, Pennsylvania, that Remington run, and Remington made the Eddystones at this locomotive factory.
So I've always wanted to know that. I've seen Eddystone on a bunch of different rifles that we've gotten in throughout the years. But why didn't they just write Remington on them, and why does it say Eddystone instead?
I have no idea, but that was the factory, was as Eddystone.
So Eddystone, if you see this, that means it came from a different
That factory.
but it's from the Eddystone factory.
Right.
Gotcha. But it's
And
still
the-
Remington.
Remington
made it.
Remington built it there, yeah. Well, when World War I started, the arsenals could not make 03 Springfields enough to arm the troops. The Army expanded so much. So they went to the manufacturer, the British contracted in, they were tooled up to build these rifles. They converted them from 303 British to 30-06, and they issued them. And one of the interesting things is, there was probably 2/3 of the troops that went overseas in World War I were armed with the 1917 Enfield instead of the 03 Springfield. Now, after World War I was over, they were put in reserve, and the U.S. Army used them for guards or training during World War II, and they shipped a lot of them over to England under Lend-Lease.
Lend-Lease. Okay. So I know that you told me earlier the most important gun on this table and the rarest gun on this table is the next one we're getting ready to talk about.
Now this is, I won't say probably the most important, but it's actually the rarest. During the 1920s, the U.S. government, to save money, wanted to train the troops with 22 long rifle instead of 30-06. So the Springfield Armory took 03 Springfields and purposely built them in 22 long rifle. And they call them M2 22 trainers. The first one would have been an M1 22 trainer, but that's an M2. It's a little later one.
So it's an M2 22 trainer. And you said earlier that they didn't make a lot of these. How many did they make?
They made about 25 to 30,000 of them. And after World War II was over, most of them were destroyed. The only ones that survived is the DCM sold some for target shooters in the 20s and 30s. 4-H clubs, Boy Scouts were given to them for training in the 20s and 30s when it was politically correct for young kids to be shooting rifles.
Now, this might be a stupid question. Steve, you might know the answer already, but when they say trainer, well, are they training to get a different gun? Like as in are they training overall as in a marksman, or are they training like, okay.
Training marksmanship training, and they were also.
Like it's not saying if you do this gun, it's training for this gun.
It's actually training for the 03 Springfield.
Okay.
If you compare the two here side to side, if you look at them, if you look how similar the bolts are. The cocking.
I see that now.
They both have cocking handles. The bolt's the same. Even the floor plate is modified. But if you could shoot this, you could shoot an 03. Now the reason the stock and the sights are a little different on this, they used these also as target rifles during the 20s and 30s. The eras of the 52 Winchesters for target rifles, they use these too. Now they're not quite as good as the purpose-built target rifles from the era. But I'll lay you 21 odds that thing will probably outshoot any 22 in the building.
Right, exactly. So they went, like I said, just to recap, they took this out. They had everybody practice with 22s, obviously.
Right.
I'm assuming for cost.
For cost.
And saying that you should be able to shoot this after you shoot
They
this.
started them with this to keep the recoil down so they wouldn't flinch. And they learned how to shoot this,
just
trigger control, sight alignment,
right.
And then they switched to the 03.
All right. So the next one, everybody knows what this is, Steve, I'm sure.
All right, what do we have here?
This is an M1 Grand, come out in 1936. All used during World War II, Korean War. As General Patton said, the best battle instrument ever devised. Very reliable. They're a good gun.
I think Alex needs to just push down on that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think Alec can push that down. Yeah.
Well, the good news is, though, Steve, is I know how to do this properly.
Oh, good. Please illustrate. Please show us.
Well, first off, you got to put your hand right here.
Go ahead. Show us.
All right, now
Yeah.
watch. You push down.
I'm going to laugh my ass
All right.
off if he smashes
now
his
watch.
thumb.
And then you just release. and the reason I know that earlier is because we were taught the correct way of doing that. And in the conversation, Steve, what were we talking about? The difference between them?
Difference between a clip and a magazine. And so we see them commonly mixed up in a gun shop.
Right. People usually say, hey, do you have a clip for this? Well,
and this is what they're talking about, but
that's not what they mean. So what do they mean when they say a clip?
A clip, there's two kinds of clip. There's an in-block clip, which you put in the rifle and becomes part of the feed mechanism, which is what an M1 Grand uses. The in-block clip holds 8 rounds. You put the whole clip and the clip stays in the rifle. On the last round, it'll eject the clip. And you always hear them go ping. They always make the pinging sound.
That's right. And so when people said, hey, you have grand thumb.
M1 Grand, M1 thumb.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What would that mean and why?
Well, if you get grand thumb, let's say you load this and you push this down like this, you can't get your thumb out of the way, and this bolt will smash your thumb like that, and your thumb bleeds and it turns black and blue.
And that's what Steve was hoping was going to happen to me.
We won't say hoping. I just, I might have laughed if it had happened.
Yeah. So, again, the next one. Now we're getting into stuff.
No, wait. Effective distance on this one.
For you shooting or me?
Yeah.
1,000 yards maybe.
All right.
Okay, that's
so
not
now we're into a rifle that's reaching out there and touching someone.
Absolutely, but we also have. What's the next one?
All right.
Steve has history like you wouldn't believe on this one, right, Steve?
I do.
Okay. This is an M1 carbine. They come out in 1940.
Where are you going with this?
Yeah, I kind of like to know that myself. But anyway, they come out in 1940.
My dad had one issued when he was in the Korean War.
Yeah, but don't you realize the reason they actually came out with the M1 carbine?
I'm going to go into that.
Because they had to replace they were getting rid of the 45 ACP, the 1911.
No, they weren't getting rid of it. They realized the reliability and accuracy. They were having issues with it.
And they were, the soldiers were struggling with the 1911.
All right, so tell us the real story. We're butchering it.
The real story is the troops, new troops, green troops, most of them never shot a handgun before. 1911s are difficult to shoot. So the Army decided they would come out with a light, handy rifle that had a little recoil that they could give to the truck drivers and machine gunners. Anybody that had 1911, they would give them a carbine. Interesting thing about carbines is they were actually more of them made during World War II than the M1 Grands, and they were made by everybody. Even Rockola, the jukebox people, made M1 carbines.
Hey, get back on me. All right. This is breaking news. The gun that we looked at earlier, we didn't even talk about why it's awesome. This one right here. Why is that awesome? What?
The range and penetration.
Okay, but what makes this one so special? Didn't you say there was something special about it?
That one there. Yeah,
we talked about this, man.
Yeah, we talked about
everybody,
it.
before we got on here, we had a conversation about it. Guys, there is something very special about this one right here. Tell us what that is. By the way, that we're going back to the Grand. I'm sorry that we're this. If you're friends with Top Guns, you know this is what we do. But why is this one so special?
This particular rifle was made by International Harvester, the tractor people.
Like the tractor company.
Oh yeah, the tractor company.
You don't know about it?
They made them.
Do I look like I own a tractor or I've driven a tractor?
I believe that you should own one.
I think I should own one. I agree.
The other interesting part about that is that rifle was made in Evansville, Indiana. Anybody been to Evansville? The Whirlpool plant in Evansville was where those was made.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
That's cool. So this was actually an Indiana gun. This is International Harvester. How many would they have made of this particular model? That's best brand,
The Harvester, I have no idea how many International Harvester. I know it's the rarest of all. In World War II, the manufacturers were Springfield Armory and Winchester. And then during the Korean War, they was running out of World War II guns. Springfield made very few. They was working on other things. H&R, Harrington and Richards, and International Harvester.
So this gun would have been used in what wars? Just to recap.
World War II and Korea.
There you go.
Very cool. All right,
They
sorry.
were phased out in 1957.
All
right, sorry about
this.
that. We got off.
And this would have been used in which wars?
They've been used World War II, Korea, and they were used in Vietnam and
Toward the beginning of Vietnam.
beginning of Vietnam. And we also gave the Vietnamese, a ton of these Vietnamese soldiers were small in stature, and we gave them a lot of these rifles early in the Vietnam conflict.
So do you believe this gun helped once they switched over, which you were saying earlier they might have taken away their 1911s and said, use this instead?
The gun was very well liked, except in winter in Germany and in Korea in the winter, they would not penetrate the greatcoat of the German soldiers, the big heavy wool coat,
Certainly
or the
from a
padded
distance. Yeah.
in Korea, the North Koreans. That was an issue with them. They're a little bit underpowered.
Distance on this?
200 yards at the best.
At the
Oh,
best,
really?
yeah. So it's more like a pistol caliber in a rifle.
If you've ever seen a 30 carbine, it's a 30 caliber
Right.
pistol
Yeah.
cartridge about that long.
All
right.
Next.
I think
Now I know you could talk about this.
we could almost do this one on our own.
All right,
But
go
we're
for
gonna
it.
leave it to the expert.
Let's
far-
start this. He's going to talk about it, but there's something on this gun that I know you want to talk about.
There's something I really like about it.
All right,
Go ahead.
This is an M14. This is an improved M1 Grand. These come out in the 50s. They developed them in the 50s. The biggest difference between the M14 and the Grand is one, instead of having the 8-round in-block clip, you have a 20-round detachable box magazine, which is what this is. They were also selective fire. They were capable of full automatic, which this one is. However, the full automatic was totally worthless. They were too light.
Is that what this is?
They were too.
This one's full auto.
So this is a full auto version. Which,
Yes.
What is? So if you're looking at this, and how can you tell right off the bat it's a
Right
full
here,
auto?
right here. This is a selector switch. An M1A will not have this and will not have this called connector link. Other than that, they look the
And
same.
I'm sorry. And again, I'm uneducated on it. So tell me what is different on this?
This is the selector. It's on semi-auto now. This is the connector. When this goes forward in full auto, it pulls that forward, and it trips the autos here. And if you look here, like I say, it's an improved M1 Grand. If you look here, look at the bolt, the action, look at the sights. The op rod, you can see that
Okay.
the heritage.
So
In the M1A, it's going to be more similar to this design versus this design. Is that correct?
The M1A would look just exactly like this. Yeah, the
Minus-
M1A
minus
would.
this.
Yeah, the M1A would be like this, the
So
Grand.
if anybody was just out there hanging out, and they were saying, okay, if I see this and obviously this,
It's a
full auto.
Yes. The interesting thing is the U.S. Army found out they were so worthless in full auto. They took the selector off and they put what they call a connector lock on. It was a round thing where you could not put them on full auto. 90% of them or better were not full auto.
And again, why were they so worthless as full auto?
They were uncontrollable. You try to shoot this from the shoulder full auto, after the first shot you're shooting at the sun, moon, and stars.
Gotcha. So you're just saying it's rising no matter what.
Well, the rate of fire is about 900 rounds a minute, and in that light of a rifle. Now this configuration here is a little different than you'd see. This is a scope during late Vietnam or all through the 70s. They had what they called an ART scope, and they used a national match M14s as a base. All M14s have the lugs to mount scopes, and they mounted the ART scope on, and they used it as a sniper rifle.
You said it's an ART scope, which is it's right there on the top. It's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
It's an AR. This is actually the second version of it. This is a military. The first version would only had one
Now, a
knob.
bit
and-
of history on this that Jan's not, or that Alex is not aware of, is that it was initially called a Smart 2, and the sticker was too long, and they had to cut the S and the M off.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I might have made that up, but it sounds good. All right.
Anyway, the way they work is it's a 3 to 9 variable power scope, and if you look in there on the reticle, there's a post on the bottom. It's like a duplex. You put the crosshair on the shoulders and the belt buckle on the bottom of the duplex, and you adjust the power where the person fills up in there, and it automatically compensates for the bullet drop. You don't have to do any adjustments, no scope adjustment or anything else. It automatically compensates for it.
All right, two questions about this. Number one, what calibers was this put out in?
Yeah, these were in 308.
Okay.
Excuse me. Let me get this straight too. They're not in 308. They're in 7.62 NATO. 7.62 NATO and 308 are not the same.
Right.
They were in 7.62 NATO. The scope was calibrated for, what is the match ammo? I can't remember. It was for 172 grain 308 match ammo. That's what the scope was calibrated for. It was a national match ammo from the era.
Okay. All right, and then this gun effective distance is going to be about.
Like I say, the auto ranging goes to 900 yards.
Okay.
So.
All right, and then this would have been used starting in what war and through when?
Vietnam and current use today. They still use M14s today. When they got in Afghanistan and Iraq, they found out in some places that the Taliban would be 600-700 yards away, and the M16s were ineffective, and they dug these out of mothballs, and they issued them as a designated marksman weapon.
So what was the one thing that you were saying earlier that you were just mind blown that this thing had?
This scope does something that really we don't see in any current modern day scope. We have modern day scopes with rangefinders, and we have modern day scopes with bullet drop compensators, but the reality mechanically, right? But none of them do exactly what this does. So what this has
digitally
right.
nowadays.
Yeah, and there's even mechanical. There's like the Churchicons have the
Right,
mechanical
that
and the
has your
L
lines.
can, right? But what this does is it has lines that move like this. So they're horizontal lines, they move. And so what you would do is you would put them so that they go to the
power
shoulders and the
changes
waist. Assuming you can tell where the waistline is, you can go to the shoulders and the waist. Sorry, couldn't pass it up. Shoulders and the waist, and then that automatically ranges for the distance. I'm sorry. And then it automatically compensates for the bullet drop because that is also built in so that you're not having to make any adjustments.
Come
once
down
you
here.
figure it out.
Now you were saying which adjustment would you do on that?
This is your power, your 3 to 9. If you look on the back, it's marked, there. It also moves this cam, and this cam actually moves the back of the scope up and down, and that's how it gets your auto ranging. And what I didn't mention earlier, when you're stratus line this way, there's 2 little dots. If you look through on the reticle, there'll be 2 dots. If the man is running, you put him on the dot, and that's your right lead.
All right, so now we're getting into something that Were you going to ask more questions on this?
I was going to say one more thing about it, and that was that the reason they no longer really make this optic is he had mentioned before in our last conversation that this particular optic is a little bit
Finicky, a little
fragile.
A little bit fragile.
They're
right?
fragile.
So they're not making, but it would be really neat for any scope manufacturers out there that are listening. It'd be really neat if one of you guys, maybe Leupold or US Optics or somebody, to Vortex perhaps, take this design and re-implement it, bring it back one more time in a better, more robust fashion.
Actually, Redfield made them.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, Redfield actually made them.
So
Or some
that
of
should be in the
them.
Leupold line now. So, all right. So what do we have next? This is something that everybody should kind of know, but this is a little different compared to
What you're used to.
Exactly.
You would call this an M16. It's selective fire, but it is not an M16. The very, very first ones were AR-15s. They were select fire. The Air Force used that version. The Army used a few of these, and then they went the M16A1. If you look at this compared to an M16, it has no forward assist. It has a short butt stock with a rubber butt plate. Your rear sling swivel is different. It has a light barrel. Now the Air Force version, it's a little later, would have had a prong flash hider. This has a birdcage flash hider.
Why would they have had a prong flash hider?
It supposedly gave a little better flash. The reason they done away with it is they said going through the brush, it brushes stuff, it gets
catch it
stuck
up,
in,
yeah.
Gotcha,
in the
yeah.
prongs. If you notice, the current flash hiders, birdcage, are closed on the bottom. These are not. So when you'd fire them, they would kick up dust. So I don't know if the A1s or the A2s when they switch from that to the other. You have to talk.
Rear sight's a little different. Of course, now most everything we see is a flat top, but this is a little different than what we've
Well,
seen.
this would have been original sight. The M16A1 would have had this same sight on it. If you notice here, it doesn't have the reinforcement on the buffer too. Now this one is later, a little later. It has a fence around the. It's not a slab side around the magazine. So this is kind of an intermediate design.
So we would have seen this system used all the way from what war starting and through current.
They're current.
Right. And
I
you
mean,
started
the
in
operating,
Vietnam.
yeah, started in Vietnam. If you take the bolt carry out of this, it'd fit any of the new ones today. The buffer, a lot of the parts are the same.
So of course now the new designation for this particular system, now they're calling it an M4. So
Yeah.
we've been through several variants, and they're a shorter barrel, but the operating system is the same.
They went from this A1, then they went to the M16A2, and now to the M4. I think
Excellent.
it's M4.
Yeah.
So Steve, I know that today we're giving away a free gun here in the shop.
We are.
A little dated if
Two
you're watching.
guns.
Yeah. So before we move on to the next guns, guys, this
We're
is
done.
not. We're going to give you an opportunity. Okay, we're going to have you. If you have any questions to ask our gentlemen here, please do so not right now, and we'll see them come up on the screen. Now we're going to talk about two more guns.
Actually,
all right.
they weren't, but-
Oh, well, we are now.
Okay.
This
Sure.
is just for the end, so that we can fill in space for when you guys are asking questions. We'll do it for a couple minutes here, and if we can answer all those questions, please let us know.
So now we're moving out of U.S. guns. So what you've seen is the history and development of the U.S. rifle as it applies to the cartridge rifles. Now, just for fun, because we are giving a couple of FNs away today, tell us a little bit about what you have here.
Okay. Everybody's heard of an FNFAL. This is an FN49. This is a forerunner of the FNFAL. The operating system's the same. The gas system's the same. They come out. Actually, the gun was developed before World War II. The inventor, and I can't pronounce his name. I don't speak French, so that leaves me out. Anyway, he fled the Nazis when they invaded Belgium. He took the designs and the prototype this rifle with him. He went to England. England didn't have the capability to build it. They sent him to Canada, and he built the English high-power pistols. Because he was the inventor of the original Browning high-power, actually. Browning never finished design. He designed before it got in there. But anyway, these were used by Belgium and Luxembourg in 30-06. Egypt bought a lot of them in 8mm Mauser. This happens to be a Venezuelan version, and it's in 7x57 Mauser.
Okay.
They're a beautiful rifle. They're well made. If you look at the fit and the finish on it, they're just a beautifully made rifle.
All right. And last you have
A high power, and I won't call it a Browning high power because it's not a Browning high power. This is an FN gun. This is a very early high power. This was probably made in the late 40s, maybe early 50s. course, Browning quit making them a couple years ago. If you look at the early ones, the newer ones have an external extractor. The original high powers, if you look here, they have an extractor like the 1911. This is a very early gun. They were a good gun.
Excellent.
Excellent gun. Actually, 75 countries in the world adopt them as their service pistol.
Really?
Yeah. It's probably the most used service pistol in any firearm ever made because they were used by everybody. And they were made in 5 different countries.
Now, you know, the one thing we failed to talk about is the effective distance on the M16 or the M4 current day. And I think the reality is the reason this gun is still in use, the M14, or as we know it in a civilian version, the M1A, the reason that's still in use in some cases is because of the lack of a distance on the M16 or the M4. So with these, you're probably realistically, I'm going to say maybe, I know they shoot them out to 600 yards, but
whatever.
the reality is it's probably a 400 to 500 yard gun, somewhere in there, and I'd rather be using it closer.
I'm sure that's debatable. And
It's
everybody's
absolutely
gonna-
debatable, yeah, so don't-
and say that kind of stuff. But guys, again, if you have any questions about anything you saw in this video today, please let us know. Basil, do you have anything you want to add so far?
No?
Okay.
All right, we want to say thanks to our special guest. Once again, we're purposely leaving his name and his face off here for obvious reasons. So thank you so much for coming out and bringing and sharing. If you have any unique guns that you would like to see from anywhere from World War I on through current, in fact, probably even going back before that, there's a good chance this gentleman has them and is willing to come in and talk about them. So let us know and we'll do another live.
That's including some big guns, guys. I mean, there's some. What would be one thing that you think would be the coolest thing you have? If you're just like, I have this and it's awesome.
I think the better question is, what is the one thing you think you have that we would think is the coolest thing you have? Because what he thinks is
Right.
cool is,
Yeah, what you think is cool, what I think is cool. What I think the coolest gun I have is a ZB-26. And nobody knows what a ZB-26 is, but everybody's heard of a British Bren gun. And a ZB-26 is a forerunner of a Bren gun, and it's made by nobody but CZ.
So, guys, if you would like to see a video on that gun, please let us know in the comments below, and we'll be glad to do that video for
all right,
you.
what's the one we would think? What's these big things you've got? You've got some big tripod
Oh,
mounted
that's World War I water-cooled guns.
water-cooled guns,
Water-cooled,
and his are the real deal. They're,
Yeah,
they run, they got
brass
some
all
fun.
over it, real nice stuff. So, guys, if there are any guns like that you would like to see us do a video over and talk about it a little bit, please comment below, and we might beg and plea and barter and see if we can get that done for you.
Guys, thanks a million. We will talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks, guys.